Hey geeks, welcome to another exciting episode of Rockin the Code World with dotNetDave. I'm David McCarter. I'm glad you're here. And guess what? It's Simon, go to the slides so I can do the drum roll. There we go. It's a 75th episode. Woohoo! I can't believe we've done 75 shows already. It seems like we just started, Simon. I don't know about you, but it seems that way to me. You know, I was talking to Simon before the show, and I was going, I'm having a hard time remembering who my guests are. I have to look at my own list because I've had so many wonderful guests on the show, including the one today, and I seem to forget it, but I've had such an awesome time, doing this show for you all for 75 episodes now. I want to make sure I give a shout out to Simon, my producer, best producer in the world. I couldn't do the show without him. Mahesh, who asked me to do this show or come up with the show 2.5 years ago. And this is what I came up with. And it seems like people like it. So I'm still here. And I'm glad you're here. It's been 2 weeks since the last show. And, I wasn't going to talk about the weather, but we've had some pretty crazy weather in San Diego lately. It's snowing, lowest altitudes in a long time, crazy winds, and now the rest of the country is being hit with all that right now. So if you're being hit with a storm that was here a couple of days ago, I'm sorry. Bunker down, watch some Netflix, put on a blanket, and ride it out. I think I heard today there's like 10 people died already from this latest storm. So be safe out there, everybody. So I want to say, show 75, Brady Gaster is on today, Principal Program Manager on the .NET team. I'm so glad to have somebody from the .NET team on for the 75th episode. Simon and I were just talking about before the show that my very, very first guest was Scott Hunter, Brady's boss, and he did it from his car. It was quite an interesting episode because it was my first one. I didn't really know what I was doing. Scott was in his car trying to get Wi-Fi or something because everything was shut down at Microsoft, and so it's been a crazy ride for 75 episodes. So I hope to do 75 more. As long as you guys keep coming back and watching, I'll be here. And with that said, if you want me to invite guests back on the show, if you want me to invite somebody on the show, please let me know. Email me. I'll have the email at the end of the show. I'll invite anybody except for a couple top people at Microsoft because they won't come on the show. Anybody I have to go through a handler, I probably won't get on the show. So anyway, show 75. I'm so excited. So let's get going. So I want to promote my latest book. It came out last month, January. Code and App Performance for Microsoft.NET. It's been selling okay, but I hope more buy it because there's a lot of great information in the book. I learned a lot from writing this book, and I use it in my job now because that's basically all I work on is performance for this company. So I hope you can pick up a copy. My latest article just dropped and is getting a lot of reads. Code quality formatting classes in Microsoft.NET to make them easy to read and modify. We write code a lot, and sometimes we end up with what we call spaghetti code. Hard to understand, hard to refactor, hard to fix. It seems like I go through this with every contract I'm on. And so I decided to, write an article of basically how I lay out my classes to make them easy for me to understand, not only now, but in the future. The future is important. A lot of people don't think about that too much. So I hope you check out the article. Almost 3,000 reads in 3 days, so I think that's pretty good. All right, let's welcome Brady. Brady works with amazing folks at Microsoft Developer Division who build SignalR or Orleans, minimal APIs, and various Azure services to bring delightful experiences to .NET developers who want to party in the cloud, and he's a musician too. So that's awesome. And he's being a bachelor this weekend, right, Brady?
I think I'm still backstage. Yeah, there.
Yeah.
Yes, this weekend my wife is taking her mother on a trip. They're taking a girls' weekend, so it's gonna be fun.
So what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, right?
Pretty much, yeah. She was excited. She was sending me pictures from Lisa Vanderpump's restaurant last night. So she was super excited to be there and everything. So the boys and I are going to go shopping today and spend all the money she's winning. So.
Who's Lisa? Who's Lisa
Vanderpump? She is a reality show star.
That's why I don't know, because I don't watch reality shows.
Yeah. She's been on a couple of the Real Housewives shows. She's got her own channel. Yeah,
I know. Cringe.
I'm with you.
They're not really reality shows. I don't know why they call them reality shows, because they're not reality, right? Yeah. They're scripted shows with producers and writers, and it's reality shows. Just another name for cheap episode. Deliver an episode for the least amount of money.
Yeah. Hey, I was wondering that the first opening song, like the one at the very beginning.
Yeah.
The drum line in that is like, it kind of reminds me of Danny from Tool. It's really, really good.
You mean with the countdown?
Yeah, with the countdown.
Oh yeah, that's I think that's a loop from GarageBand or something.
Okay.
Yeah.
The drums were amazing in that. I was hoping it was like you're a drummer for your band or something. Really cool.
No, my drummer is in the second song.
Right? Yeah. He's good too.
Yeah, Jeff is great. He's
really, really good.
He not only is a software engineer, but his main band is a Led Zeppelin tribute band here.
Oh, wow,
cool. I used to do photography for, and he is really good, on doing the John Bonham. He's got the drum kit just like he does. He has, with the logos on it, the same way the Led Zeppelin had it back in the day. And he's awesome drummer.
Nice. Yeah, that's how my wife grew up. Her little brother was a Zeppelin drummer.
Yeah.
So she said for years and years, it was like the whole neighborhood was like, oh my God, we're so tired
of Zeppelin. I don't really say this, but, back when I was a teenager, I didn't really listen to Zeppelin, and because they just played them all the time on the radio, and whenever you hear a song like on repeat, on an endless loop, it just kind of, you got to get tired of it, and after they were gone, basically, I started getting back into Zeppelin, and, Song Remains the Same movie. I saw that in the theater when it came out,
Nice.
And, and going back to the old days of just how freaking creative those guys were. I think I made a comment on Twitter this week that, I did a poll on Twitter asking for my music handle, and I said, okay, what's the album? I'll ask you to see if you know. What's the album that spent the most weeks on the Billboard charts?
It was 4, right?
Huh?
4? Was it Led Zeppelin 4?
No.
You mean the most weeks ever?
The most ever on the charts. Yeah.
Oh, this is gonna kill me. I'm not gonna get it right, but
it's 900 and some odd weeks, by the way.
900 and some odd weeks. It's not Led Zeppelin 4. That would be my guess.
No.
Back in Black?
No, but that's a good that would be a good one, actually.
Okay, let me try a third time. Not that many weeks, huh? Is it a Beatles album?
No.
Okay.
Not even Beatles. And I gave people a hint. The hint was, I'll give you the hint.
Okay.
It's not a pop band, right? It's a real band.
Right.
And the original, the guy that originally started it was kicked out for mental disease.
Oh, Pink Floyd.
Yes. What album?
The Wall.
No.
Dark Side of the Moon?
Yes.
That just celebrated 43 years or 50 years, this year or something.
Yeah.
Dark
Side of the Moon.
I was just talking about that album. That's a good album.
Yeah. Oh, I gave another hint. There's a conspiracy theory that album is the soundtrack of the Wizard of Oz.
I've heard this before.
Yeah, it's not true,
college.
right?
It's not true.
No.
Okay.
All the band members says it's not true. Yeah,
I've heard that one, and then I've heard what's the other one? There's a Disney movie, this one where Mickey's conducting.
Yeah,
that one. Is the soundtrack for something else, like the Wizard of Oz or something like that. Yeah. If you put them next to each other, you get secret messages.
That's what people. I think back in the day, people got stoned, watched the Wizard of Oz, and put on Dark Side of the Moon. And go, hey, that's this.
This worked out. Yeah. No, we're actually just talking about Pink Floyd this week. They're so legendary. They're so.
I know, and you know, I went back and I looked, you know, on Wikipedia at some of the information for the album, and you know, unlike today in today's pop world, you know, though every instrument on that album was played by those guys, except for the saxophone, right? That's the only instrument. They played everything, they wrote everything, they did it all themselves without an army of producers and writers and, you know, everything, you know, like Beyonce couldn't produce a song by herself if she wanted to, right? She has a whole army of people that do that, right?
Oh yeah. So
I
was gonna say the one that blew my mind. My brother-in-law, obviously big music nut. We were chatting the other day, and he said it was so weird, and I don't know why I'd forgotten this or not made the connection or whatever. But he was like, "Yeah, biggest mistake SRV ever made was not hanging out with Bowie longer." And I stopped for a second, and I went, "Oh my God, that's SRV on Modern Love." And he goes, "You don't remember that?" And I was like, "Oh my God, I forgot about that." Like Bowie gave SRV his break.
Yeah.
That's incredible to think about. Bowie's like the man, dude.
Oh, yeah, Bowie. I was sad when he died. It was we're losing all the greats to me. You know, we lost Bowie and Prince and, you know, Freddie Mercury a long time ago, unfortunately. And you know, all these great musicians that, you know, did it all themselves back in the days, back in the 70s and 80s, you know. Unlike today, where it's it's a mass produced, you know.
Oh, it is. Yeah, you mentioned Hunter earlier. I think your second show with him was also in the car. I think he was doing something with his wife, so he was like in a parking lot or something.
No, that was the first one. That was the first one.
Oh, okay. I thought that was the second one.
No, that was the first one. Yeah.
Hunter and I had the pleasure of catching two really cool shows together. We saw Mark Knopfler, which was great. Wow. Yeah. We felt really young. It was cool. And then the second show we caught together was AC/DC. The unfortunate thing about that particular concert was that was the one that they did an experiment where they put a stadium sound set inside of the Tacoma Dome. It was really, really painful for like 2 weeks. It was awful. It was also the last show before they kicked out Brian.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and then they hired Axl the next day. Yeah, it was weird.
Oh God, yeah. I wouldn't even watch videos of that. That's just not AC/DC. It's horrible. You know, bad decision.
That was a super fun concert. That was a good one. Hey, while we're talking about music, before we switch off and talk about geek stuff, I want to ask you if you've ever seen one of these.
No.
This is called an Empress Zoya. Okay. And I know you're a guitar player. I wanted to tell you about this. It's essentially a modular pedal. So what you can do is it's got like all the normal effects, but if you start like looking for its documentation, the documentation is pretty thin, but what it comes with is an Excel spreadsheet with all the different patches that it's got, and you can stitch them all together. So essentially you can be like, this is my input, this is my output. You can put your delay here, you can put like stuff across here, and each one of these, you've got this page button here. So each you know, patch that you do, you can actually have different pages of all these effects.
Yeah.
You should check it out. They just introduced one for the folks like me that do Eurorack stuff. So it's actually got CV outputs.
Yeah.
But if you're into like your guitar effects the way I am, you should check out the Zoya. It's a cool little toy.
Yeah, I will. You know, so my main guitar processor is the Line 6 Helix.
Oh, that's amazing. I couldn't afford that, so I got this.
Yeah, is freaking awesome, you
It's
know,
freaking
and
awesome.
it's very complicated.
Yeah.
It's taken me a long time to figure it out and
Yeah.
get everything just right. But you know, before we move off the subject, you know, because you're a guitar player too, you know, it's so I use it in conjunction with one of the Line 6 guitars, right?
Oh, cool.
I've had a Line 6 guitar since 2005 or
Oh, nice.
something like that. And
Right.
now I have the latest JVT guitar that they have. And so, you know, the Line 6 guitars, if you guys, you know, are never seen them. So all guitars are analog, right? But Line 6 guitars are, at least the model I have is analog and digital,
Yeah.
right? So it has 2 pickups in it, but it also has 6 Pezio pickups in it that picks up each string individually, and
No way.
which allows me to like change the string tunings individually,
Oh,
right?
that's
So
dope.
yeah,
That's cool.
yeah. And so my guitar is always tuned to E flat, right? But I also play in E, drop D flat, all these other tunings from the same guitar, you know, and it's all programmed within the guitar. I just press a button and it switches, right? And
Does it mess with you that the tension doesn't change?
no, because I like the looser tension, so I'm
Okay.
always so the strings actually don't change, right? It's
So that, yeah, that's what I'm saying.
yeah,
When I
yeah.
tune, I can feel it. So I'm like,
Yeah, yeah. But I
well,
always play an E flat because it makes them a little looser, a little easier to
yeah, yeah, yeah.
bend and, you know, things like that. But, you know, one of the things I've been doing, I want to say 2 things real quick before we move off. You know, so I've had Line 6 gear since then, right? And I bought, it's sitting right over there. I bought I had the very first Line 6 amplifier, which I sold to my chiropractor. Then I bought this, then I brought the second one, which is the Variax, right? And the
Yeah.
main reason I bought it is because you can play 2 completely different amp signals, right, at the same time,
Oh, that's
right?
money.
And I was really interested in that because, you know, we were talking about Tool earlier, and, you know, the guitarist from Tool plays through 3 amps at one time, right?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And so I've taken his setup and I have that now. I play through 2 amps and a bass amp at one time, right? And I'm able to do that, you know, using the Helix. But the other really, and the Line 6 guitar, and the really other cool thing that you'll probably like, and I do this at the beginning of the one of my favorite bands who I've met, you know, a couple times, the Cult, you know,
Oh, we were talking
Billy,
about them. I love
yeah,
them so much. I just saw them like a couple of weeks
yeah.
ago. Yeah.
Billy Duffy, you know, I've
No, I
talked to
love
Billy
it.
Duffy backstage a couple times. Guy's awesome, right?
So good.
And so anyway, you know, the beginning of Sanctuary, the way he recorded it, you know, of course, it's multi-layered
Yeah, yeah,
guitars
yeah.
with the sitar and all these and the backwards masking, you know, backwards tracking and everything.
Yeah, yeah.
I do that all through my Helix and my guitar,
Oh,
right?
that's cool.
So in Sanctuary, I use the humbuckers, right, for the guitar sound, but then I have a separate thing where I can do the sitar and I can play the humbuckers and the sitar at the same time
Oh, that's dope. That's cool.
with backwards masking, right? So I have the backwards looping going on exactly like they recorded it. But you know, the only way I can do that really is through the Helix.
That's cool. Yeah, this
Yeah.
thing, it can do things like it can interpret, it can intercept I can't remember what the effect is that it's got that it's called, but it basically can intercept the tone, and then it can send that tone out through CV or send it out through MIDI.
Yeah.
So what I could do is I could split the sound, but it doesn't have the ability to go to multiple amps, that's hot. But what's really neat about it is I could actually play something on the guitar and transmit a MIDI note to like my Moog. So I can play like a chorus effect on the Moog for my guitar. There's a slight delay, but you get used to it. It's kind of fun. The dude from Royal Blood, they're a 2-man band. They have a drummer and a guitar player, and they both sing, I think. But the guy that plays guitar, he uses an octaver, and you can hear the bass. Like he'll play the guitar, but you'll hear the bass that's going along with the guitar. It's all him. And he does the same thing. He'll split the output, one into a bass amp, one into a guitar amp.
Okay, we're geeking out. We got to get the software. Otherwise,
we got software.
Your boss is going to get mad at me,
Oh, no,
you know, or you. So what's up in the world of distributed systems in .NET now?
There's a lot of things that are going on. You know how like .NET 6 and .NET 7, we really concentrated on like, our client story and mobility and, the different things in Maui. I heard a friend joke at one point. He was like, it sounds like .NET 8 feels like it's cloudy with a chance of Maui, because like, we're really, really doubling down on like,
Maui.
we're really doubling down on all the cloud stuff, which is great for me. It's been great to see all the Maui stuff, percolate and get really good.
Yeah.
And the ASP.NET team has always been, in the background building the APIs that all those apps are talking to. Yeah. But over the past couple of years with the, as we've acquired, if you will, Orleans, and then, we've been moving closer and closer. Hunter went over, he's not a boss anymore.
Oh, really?
He went over to the Azure side.
Oh.
And now the .NET side is led by this great guy in Gaurav. And we work really closely with Hunter because so much of what we're doing in .NET is focused on the cloud stuff. Yeah. So, Hunter's team is working on a lot of really exciting things like Azure Container Apps. And what I've been doing over the last year and a half is figuring out exciting ways to like collaborate with Paul Uke and the Dapper team to do exciting things in that space, from the pure microservice stuff, as well as figuring out new ways that we can use Orleans to enable like ASP.NET developers to scale out their apps. Yeah. There's a community member, for instance. There's a lot of community members in the Orleans family. It's been around for about 10 years now. But one of the gentlemen in the community actually wrote a implementation of distributed cache on top of Orleans. I recently took his code and tweaked it a little bit for the 7 version of Orleans because I was proving out some stuff. But essentially, you could actually roll your own, distributed providers for things like cache, the rate limiting stuff we shipped in 7, et cetera, et cetera. A lot of those things, when you scaled out horizontally, there's inherent issues. You have to change your code a little bit. You have to turn on data protection, blah, 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 blah. Orleans makes a lot of that really easy because what it does is it obfuscates where the object lives, like what server it lives on. So when you're thinking about, you might want to, bifurcate your app and have, one node in your microservice topology might be the API that receives, orders. And then you might want to have one microservice that's just spinning in the background, processing them. Or you might want to fan that out and have one individual object for every single order that's spinning on its own. Yeah. Orleans is really great for all those things. And in 7, we shipped Orleans and ASP.NET kind of side by side. Shortly after ASP.NET, we did 7.1 or Orleans 7.1 to kind of bring a couple of updates to it. We're going to continue that cadence. We're going to lock the cadence next to each other so that 8.0 and 7, or Orleans 8 and ASP.NET Core and .NET 8, go out at the same time. Yeah. Orleans 7 was the first Orleans that took a hard dependency on the actual runtime version. So Orleans 7 is the first Orleans that you can't do with like anything before .NET 7. And a lot of that is because we're taking advantage of things like the open telemetry extensions in .NET 7 and, some of the other performance improvements we did in .NET 7 as well. It was also a great time for us to make some, some breaking changes that we'd wanted to make for a really long time. Yeah. One of the things in Orleans prior to 7 was like, let's say you wanted to have a customer object and your customer grain would pass that object state back and forth. It could just be a POCO. You wouldn't have to really do anything to it. Maybe mark it as serializable. In .NET 7, we've optimized it so that now you have to actually do some work. You have to mark classes that you're going to use that way with it's called generate serializer. And then you have to mark each property with kind of an attribute that says what order it's going to be done in, kind of like protobuf attributes. What that did for Orleans customers is a couple of things. We wrote about this in our update doc post. But one of the things that it does is it dramatically increases performance. We've gone as high as like 4 to 6x in some of the tests that we've run in our labs. And Ruben and I talked about that in our Orleans session at Build as well. We actually continue to see the performance going up. There was actually a benchmark done of, even though we don't like to call it this, .NET Actor models that are out there in the wild. Proto Actor was definitely faster, but that was in our 3x realm. I'd love that author, if he's watching, to repeat that.
Faster than Protobuf?
Pardon me? Proto Actor. factor.
Hmm.
But that was one change that we made. Another reason we made that change is prior to Orleans 7, if you were to, like, let's say you create an order object and you've got the order object floating around in your Orleans cluster, it was a lot harder for you to add properties or to like extend that object, to have versions of that object. With Orleans 7, it's a lot easier. Since we've got those markers on the properties, and since we've got the generate serializer attribute, basically everything can, you can version those objects independently as you want to, and things will continue to work. So that's definitely an improvement. One of the drawbacks of that update is that people can't just migrate from 3x to 7. There's a little bit of work and thought process involved, but we like to support the team. We've got, Orleans team has a Discord. I could share that with you. We have a Discord where people are in all the time, where we answer issues on GitHub all the time. So, we're definitely out there. And for folks who have a Microsoft support agreement, and they've wanted to always use products that Microsoft is supporting, like you can, phone call or I hate when people do that, phone call. Figure out,
Brady,
exactly, help me.
My clusters aren't working.
We're working very closely with our talented team of support engineers to actually bring Orleans support with .NET 8. My plan is to enable Orleans as a supported tech in the .NET 8 timeframe. So if folks need to call and be like, how do I set up a cluster, or my cluster blew up and this looks why, we'll be able to support you on it. We already do as the team, but it'll be nice to have the support engineers there too to kind of help us out with it. So that'll be good. But really what that did was that sort of inspired a lot of folks in specifically the ASP.NET team to really start looking at how to make, distributed stuff easier. You could talk about it as cloud native. You could talk about it as, API based development, whatever, microservices. But at the very base level of it, it's distributed. Like you don't know how many servers you have right now. Something might spike and you have 10. Like, you might have 1, you might have 10, you might have 20. So your apps need to operate as such. And to do that, there is code you need to write. Like you have to turn on data protection if you're not running in a PaaS that has built-in data protection, like Azure App Service on Windows. If you're running in a containerized environment, you have to know how to basically share your telemetry into a central place, et cetera, et cetera. Some of those things aren't easy. And what we're trying to do, a lot of the teams at Microsoft, the ASP.NET team, like I said, is working closely with the Azure Container Apps team and some other folks in Hunter's org. And we're really trying to figure out like all the things that we can do to make it such that you can say, I want a new distributed, .NET environment, and I'm going to put my code in it and it's going to work. And it's going to scale up and down and sideways and whatever you want. So that's what we're trying to do right now for, introducing a lot of that in 8 and beyond. Another thing you'll probably begin to hear about around the build time frame. That's why I couldn't take your first call. Sorry, buddy. I had to wait till at least March to talk about that. But when you start to look at the build time frame and you start to look at some of the sessions that are up there on .NET and cloud, you'll begin to see that we're also making investments for folks who, like, if you want to build a service, like I'll pick on Stripe, for instance, like they're a great service. They have a million APIs running in the cloud. If you are a service like that, and you use .NET, there are things like, resiliency patterns and, queuing patterns and those sorts of things that have been in .NET forever, and different providers exist. But a lot of folks are like, well, I want the .NET way. The .NET team has kind of been like, there's a lot of people doing that. We don't really want to, we've been hesitant, if you will, to say this is the way. So I think what you're going to see, not to quote the Mandalorian, but it is a good opportunity. But I think what you're going to see is that the .NET teams are really going to start to look at what teams at Microsoft have done, with .NET to build out these big services, and to make it easier for customers to replicate those kinds of environments. Like we want you to be able to use the stuff we use the way we use it. And we want to package it up and make it friendlier and less, more efficient for you to write your code. And to kind of give folks, a lot of folks come to me and they go, how do I do X? And I'm like, there's 17 different ways. How do I do it? I'm like, we're going to go through the question matrix. You know what I mean? So what we're going to try to do is to mitigate some of those early questions. Here's some options, here's some scenarios, put these options in these scenarios. This is like this is like that, et cetera, et cetera. So I think you'll see a lot of focus on cloud in .NET 8. So if you're doing distributed development, we're going to start to make that a lot easier for you than we have in the past.
Yeah, that's at work. We're at the contract I'm working on right now. The reason they hired me was because they're having performance issues. They can only have a small amount of people on one server at a time, and
That's not good.
no, it's not good. And when you were talking all about that, the one thing I kind of want to caution people is, all this takes good architecture, right?
Yeah.
And you just can't slap this stuff together and expect it to work reliably, now or even in the future, right? You have to architect stuff. You have to think about it. You just can't, let's get this done in a week and, move on. Because then you'll end up with, what I call a lot of times spaghetti code, right? And it's hard to modify, hard to change. They were having performance issues, so they implemented protobuf, and even that caused some issues. And so you got to take thinking and time and just don't read an article and do it, right? Read an article and then learn how to apply that to your particular thing you're trying to solve, right? Yeah.
I also like our fearless leader, Julia Lucen. She has this great thing that she likes to say to us. She says, strong opinions held loosely. I think, like, I was chatting with a CSA that's probably our age the other day, and he was kind of telling my dev lead and I, frankly, he was kind of telling us off. What I mean? and we were kind of telling him some of our plans for 8 and beyond. You know what I mean? He's shaking his head. And I was like, do me a favor. Let's say we did give you this. Can you tell me where you would use it? So then he starts saying where he would use it. And I was like, how would it make it easier for you?
Yeah.
You have to get people off of no.
Right.
You have to get people to yes, but.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, you have to get people to start thinking, like, I love .NET, and I have loved .NET for close to 30 years. You know what I mean? But there's pain with every framework. God, there's pain with Java too. There's pain with all of it. You know what I mean? But I think we get used to our pain.
Yes.
And I think sometimes when I'm like, I'm going to take that pain away from you, people are like, wait, no.
I want it.
You take that pain away, you're going to take the confidence that I was able to get through that pain. Yeah. Well, I know that pain. Like, let me just take care of it for you. They're like,
And Microsoft in the past is, the whole time you've been speaking, I've been thinking about your competitors, and Microsoft in the past has really, they don't do it all the time. You guys don't do it all the time, but there's been instances in the past with .NET, at least, where you guys really said, okay, we're going to make this easier for developers. Like .NET 2 was that, right? Yeah. .NET 2 was, a huge leap from 1 and 1.1, right? Yeah. Especially with ASP.NET, right? Yeah. It was a big change to ASP.NET. And
just don't mention 2.2. Just don't mention 2.2.
Yeah, and that's what I really like about Microsoft is that, even when I started, even as an MVP, 17, 18 years ago, Microsoft was not as open as you guys are now, right? It was kind of like the Apple way, it's our way or the highway kind of thing. And Apple's that way, right? And other companies are that way. And the one thing, and I'm not just saying this because I'm Microsoft MVP and I use Microsoft products. Microsoft has really embraced all technologies, not just .NET, but other ones, right? And try to bring that into their ecosystem, especially with Azure. And so, of course, Microsoft.NET's going to be the first class citizen, but you also bring in all these other things. And I don't feel that same kind of thing with your competitors, right? They're more, it's our way, the highway, you have to use our stuff, if you want to use your stuff, it's going to suck and it's going to be, and you're going to have to wait 6 months before you can use the latest whatever. And, and so, the .NET ecosystem, I think has really grown up in the last, 21 years that .NET's been around.
Oh yeah. It has. I mean, I think about some of the things, there's there's one thing that I mentioned the other day. We were chatting with some folks. You talk about how we've invested in other tech. I think the last time we met, I was just beginning an adventure is what they call an end-to-end PM, and I'm still doing a bit of that. But what I learned in doing that is softening one's vision so that you're not looking at it from the lens of a .NET developer, but you're looking at it through the lens of an Azure developer, or like somebody moving to cloud.
Right.
Because when you're thinking about cloud, cloud native, there's a lot of polyglot out there. Like there's a lot of languages out there, and people are like, oh, I'll just do this with Node. It'll take me 5 minutes versus blah, 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 blah. I'm like that. I can do that.
Yeah, do it with Node and 5,000 files. Go.
Yeah, exactly. It's like 5,000 files or 5,000 DLLs. I do like some of the effort that we've put into going. Let's not look at what one little thing, like how to do file new project, this, then this, then this, then this, then this. But like, how do you make a web app talk to an API? Right. Okay. And then they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, make a web app talk to an API.
Yeah.
They're like, in what language? I'm like, all of them, all of them, like all four, like, the big four,
Doesn't matter.
And then people are like, what should it look like at the end? So then you're like, okay, well, let's do this. Like, I'll do it first. Like, and this is where it got really interesting. Like, I would do it first in .NET, and I would be like, this was painful. I filed an issue on this team. This broke. I filed an issue on this team. It took me like 8 hours to do blah, 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 blah. You know what I mean? And they're like, wow, okay. So I'm going to do this in language foo. Yeah. And then they have to go hunting and pecking and finding it. And it's the same thing. And it's like, and you start looking at the time, and it's like the same experience, the same pain points, the same processes. And it's like, okay, well, they're here, but they're used to this pain. This group of people is not used to those kinds of pain. We're introducing new pain. So then it's like, okay, well, let's look at their cultural, like the Node developer, or let's look at the Java developer. And they have it's just a different ilk, you know? And sometimes you have to kind of put lipstick on a pig, if you will. You know what I mean? But I've seen that as well, and I've seen a lot of enthusiasm. Like I talk a lot to Natalia from Spain. She is one of our Node and TypeScript end-to-end PMs in Azure. And listening to some of the frustrations that her developers are facing, they're different, but they're as passionate. You know what I mean? It's like every ASP.NET developer is like, my cores isn't working. You know what I mean? For JavaScript, it's like a totally different set of frustrations and paper cuts. So it's fun. It's fun to watch. But what we've been doing at Microsoft for the last 2 years is being very surgical about let's say our scenario is a web app talking to API that talks to database, and you have monitoring all the way through. Right. Like at the end, you should see a screenshot that looks like this if you've done it right. Right. How long does it take you to get to that screenshot? So then we would go through it like 4 or 5 times and find all the pain points. And then we would do customer interviews. And we would talk to customers and watch them go through it. And that is where the diamonds pop up. Yeah. Like you're like, oh my God, I can't believe nobody knew to do that. Like, wow. Like nobody knew to click that button. Like it's big and red, and we have arrows pointing at it.
But I like your comment about people get used to the pain. I've never I'm sure I've heard that, but I haven't in a long time, I think. And it kind of reminded me of kind of the contract I'm working on now. And so my boss is comes from the Java Linux world, right? And for some reason we code in Windows, but we build and test in Linux. I don't understand it. It's been causing me tons of headaches, but I don't want to get into all that because I'll get fired. But but
can't you just use containers?
But the thing that you said, which really hits home for me, is that whenever he's explaining something to me in Linux, right, he goes, "Yeah, it's messy, it's hard to understand, blah blah blah, but just do this." And I'm going, okay, but I do that, but then I can't understand what comes out. And so you're right. People get used to that pain, I think I tweeted this week or something that, I don't ever want to use Linux again after this experience because it's so painful, right? I know, but I mean, if you come from, I started with VB2,
Yeah.
right? Visual Basic 2,
Yeah.
Windows 3 or 3.1 or something like that, right? And so I come from a world where things were RAD, right? Rapid application development.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Right. And so for me to drop down and do console stuff and even worse, 30 years of being a developer, I can't remember that shit,
Yeah.
and so I can't remember crap, and so it's hard for me to do that. It's hard. And it's not only hard for me to do it, but it's hard for me to understand what the output is.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is really important because I've been dealing with these freaking build issues on Linux that I have a really tough time understanding, and I really can't solve because I'm not a Linux guy,
Right.
and I have to wait for my boss to have time to help me. And, and so, yeah, I'm like electricity. I'd like to take the easiest path to the end, right?
Yeah.
That's the way electricity works, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
And I want to get there to the end with the best outcome as fast as possible.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I agree.
But not only, and I want to caution everybody, is not only for now, but the future. I always think about the future, right? I future-proof my stuff. And I know some people think that's a bad word, but I think it's a great word, right? Because when you go back later and have to fix something, you go, oh my God, I'm so glad I took a few minutes to do that better, right?
Yeah. That's something that I've thought about a lot. I used to be a consultant as well. I sometimes miss it, but it's painful as heck too.
Yeah.
But it's the thing that I remember about consulting, and I did a lot of consulting gigs, like 6-8 months here, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
It's like talking to a drama nerd. Like, when you talk to somebody who's been in a lot of parts, like they know a lot of weird stuff.
Yeah.
Like I've worked in so many industries because everybody needs tech.
Yeah.
It's like I can tell you about like insurance rating engines, and I can tell you about like startups, and it's weird.
Yeah.
But one of the things I learned in that is it's like it gets ingrained into like a team gestalt.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, let's say you're building, Project X, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, there's 4 developers there, and then there's 6 developers, and maybe there's 8, you know what I mean? And everything's cooking with grease. Everything's cool. Like, somebody might not like John or whatever, but like everything's usually pretty cool. You know what I mean?
Right.
And like at some point, somebody makes some sort of architectural decision.
Mm-hmm.
And you're in a room and everybody's like, like there's 3 or 4 people like, I don't know. Like, like at that moment, like how many times have you been one of the people going, fuck, whatever. And like you go forward and like every single next explosion that happens, you go, it all goes back to that one meeting.
Yep.
Does that ever happen to
exactly.
you too? Or is that just
happen all the time?
It's so annoying. It's like that one stupid thing. It's like 2 years later.
And I've, I don't know if everybody out there has been a consultant, but consultants make good money. We were hourly. We make a high hourly rate, right? And I remember,
but there's no security whatsoever in the role.
Well, I know,
Yeah.
but I remember even 20 years ago when I was working just right up the street from me, actually across the street from me, and the guy hired me, and they hired me as the .NET expert, right? But then they wouldn't invite me to meetings, right? But my desk was right outside the meeting room, and I would hear them, and they were, contemplating, trying to figure out stuff. And I go, I know the answer. Why don't you invite me to the meeting? Why are you paying me all this money and not listen to me? Right? And you remind me of something that I talk a lot about, and I know a lot of people don't like doing this, but I encourage people when I'm in conferences and stuff. I have a saying that be the squeaky wheel, right? If you see something you might not like or might be a problem down the road and stuff, speak up, right? Even if you're consultant, I don't care if I'm consultant or full-time, I act the same, right? I don't change because of my position, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm the squeaky wheel. I unfortunately have a reputation for that, right? But I don't do it to be an a-hole. I do it because I want to make our customers happy. Right. And myself happy in the same time, right? I mean, we have to find joy in our job, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things, like you were talking about. I hate to use these terms, but traditional Microsoft versus Nouveau Microsoft.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I've seen in the later Microsoft is this. It's weird, like like the whole industry got rid of QA, a number of years back.
Yeah.
I was.
Yeah, I know. No QA people anymore.
Yeah. I was a squeaky wheel on that. I was extraordinarily public about it, and not just at Microsoft. I did not like it. No. But I was like, something bad's going to happen here. And what we found was that a lot of the QA engineers were really freaking great coders. Like they started coding and they were amazing. They were like teaching devs like, I don't know why you were doing this the whole time. Like, and like you see like that improve, but then later you see like kind of a lack of focus on, and this is the entire industry. Like I can tell you apps on my phone that have nothing to do with tech that fall into the same trap. Yeah. Like the end-to-end. The end-to-end. It's like some developer goes, they're going to know how to get to the end.
Right. Yeah,
it's like Office Space. Like you never let developers talk to people.
I know. I've tweeted at Mike Judge going, can you do a sequel to that, please? There's more software developers in America than police and doctors, which every freaking show seems to be about on television, right? Why don't we have a show about us? There's more of us than them,
that'd be
right?
Really good, actually.
I know, huh? I know. Well, he did Silicon Valley, but so that was good. But I think we should have a show, and not only because I want to laugh at the crap we put up with, but part of me wants the rest of the world to understand what it really takes to develop software.
Yeah.
Right? Because 99% of the world has no idea, right?
Yeah.
They just think we sit in front of the computer and go, app.
No. There's so much smoothing that goes into software. It's insanity.
And it's worse. It's much worse than when I started, right? Yeah. And the complexity of software now is immensely bigger than 30 years ago when I started, right? Because 30 years ago, we only had basically 2 operating systems, right? We had the UI was on the OS, and the web was just coming in at that point, but you couldn't really do anything on the web back then, just except for show files and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it's so much more complicated now. And something I've been thinking of, and I don't know if I didn't really want to say this publicly, but especially with all the consulting work that I do, it's becoming frustrating that that software developers are being made to do more and more now than software development.
Oh yeah.
You agree? Yeah. Like we have to be QA people, we have to be build people, we have to be we have to be project managers now, right? And all these titles we do gets in the way of what we love doing, right? Because all those things we don't like doing, right? We don't want to do, project management. We don't want to do QA. Well, we shouldn't be doing QA, number one, right? And we want to code. I mean, that's what gives us joy is fixing problems or delivering something the users love, right? Yeah. That's what brings me joy, at least.
Yeah.
And
go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I'm done.
I had that conversation with Mr. Edwards recently, Damien. We were talking about some library we were thinking about adding to like minimalers. I can't remember what we were thinking about doing. And I would always kind of throw out, well, what if we work with this team to get them to do blah, 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 blah. And Damien's like, no, because it doesn't matter. He goes, eventually they just want to get into the code.
Yeah.
And I was like, ugh, you're always right. Why are you always right? But it's really, that comment has made me kind of think the way you're talking now.
Yeah.
Is like, instead of like, I've always been an Azure person, you know what I mean? I was a .NET person first, and then I became an Azure person, and it's been like this duality ever since then.
Yeah.
But I always look to how can the cloud solve the problem for me?
Right.
You know what I mean? And Damien always looks at like the editor window in Visual Studio and starts typing. Like, how can I solve the problem myself?
Right. Right.
and it's a very empowering thing to be around that a lot,
Yeah.
and to like listen to our devs who were just like, they're just coding,
Mm-hmm.
and I think a lot of us, we know Brock, so we know how to go talk to him and use Identity Server, or we know, the guys at Octopus, so we can reach out to them and figure out how to run our CI/CD. But like, there's a lot of people that don't know any of those people.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that coding part is like, if you could just leave them the code.
Yeah.
But it's like, what are they coding? Are they coding YAML? Are they coding C#? Are they coding Docker?
Yeah.
Are they coding?
So we got to go soon, but I did it. I just came up with a question for you besides the question that I have that was in the email, which I'll ask you in a minute. But so, one of the things I've maybe complained about off and on is that, Microsoft developers like you guys live in a bubble, right? And so and you're kind of insulated from the rest of the world, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
And so I never thought of this question before. So since you're a Microsoft developer, and since you came from, the consulting world and before Microsoft, how do you keep current and not get stuck in the Microsoft bubble?
Oh, that's a hard question. That's a really hard question.
I just came up with it. I only have one good idea a day.
That's okay. That's a really great question. I would say for a while, probably up until the last 3-4 years, I was doing a pretty good job of that. I would kind of stay up on like, free project, bar project, whatever. I went really into the I think the last time we talked, I was kind of in the beginning of that transition. I went from, I tried to go from broad to deep. And I really just wanted to get back in, like you're saying, like I just thought one day, what do I love? What do I love? I love .NET. You know what I mean? I just want to do .NET again. That's what I was teaching you, all .NET. And I just really tried to start to push some of those things aside. You know what I mean? And the more I did that, the more happy I felt. You know what I mean? Because like, I'm back in my little box again, exactly where I shouldn't be. And over time, I started hearing about things like Ballerina. And I would look at Ballerina. Oh, that's exciting. How can I apply that to .NET?
See, I don't even know what that is. So
Ballerina is a cool like cloud native microservice framework. They kind of have their own language. It's pretty cool. Like their own little DSL. It's pretty exciting looking. I took a peek at it in a summit we had, and then you think about some of the other cloud native stacks that are out there. I think one of the things that's exciting about the cloud native space is that there's so many things. I think the thing that's daunting about it is there's so many things. So what I'll try to do, what I'll try to do is to solve a problem on my own now. And I'll ask a few people like, hey, do you have a library that does this? Do you have a library that does that? And then I'll put it out to Twitter, and then I'll invite somebody like Natalia to put it out for me, like somebody who's in a totally different community, who's not going to be like, echo chamber. I also go to people in different communities and be like, we have this, what should I try over here? Like OpenAI. I had no idea what I was doing, just like fumbling around, it's a totally different ballgame. I think that's, it's challenging. It's challenging, man. How do I do it? I have read less blogs and kept up less with RSS than I should have. I really should be spending like the first half hour of my day, like I used to, looking at everything that's out there, but Google killed readers. So it's really hard. So,
So the last question I have for you, because I don't ask what you do for fun, because I did that the first time.
That's okay.
So, one of your tweets recently was about getting healthy. So we only have a couple minutes, but what kind of led you in? So one of the things I talk about sometimes is we need to stay healthy. It's a struggle for me constantly, and, we have a job that's not good for us, sitting and staring at the freaking screen all day. And, so what led you to kind of go on your healthy kick? Because I did that 10 years ago, and I lost, 140 pounds.
Wow, dude.
In the last 11 years now, I've lost 140 pounds.
That's intense.
Yeah.
Intense, dude.
Well, it was, thanks, but it was a lot of freaking hard work. Some people say, well, it's easy. No, it's not. It wasn't easy. It was
hard as hell.
It's painful, and it's still painful, to keep up with that. So what led you into this decision?
It's the short version of the story is in 2021, I did the same thing. I began running And I talked to Kevin Pilch, and I love to say this. He hates it when I say this. He doesn't even reply anymore when I do this. But Kevin Pilch saved my life. I was talking to him, and I was like, dude, I have the worst problem going to sleep. I can't believe you're asleep every night by 8:30. And he was like, I get up at 5 and I run. And I went, okay, I'll do that tomorrow. So I did that every day that year. From like January 7th on, like after my hangover, wherever, I started running every day, and I did a 5K almost every single day, including a trip to Vegas with Mads.
Wow.
Like I got up and did a 5K.
Mads Torgerson?
Yeah, Mads Torgerson. So the end of that year, I fell into a deep depression and started playing video games and didn't get up from my desk for a year and gained all that weight back.
Yeah.
So this year I'm done with that. I just don't want to do that anymore. I think just being away from everybody was really painful. Yeah. And then also we lost a family member from Alzheimer's. Wow, just hearing from people like the way to prevent that stuff, work out every single day, be as active as you can. Like that's just it. You got to stay alive,
Yeah. I lost my mother from dementia, and I spent sorry, I'm getting emotional now whenever I think about my mom, but
it's not easy.
But I spent the last 3 weeks with her, and to see how someone dies from that disease is just traumatic.
Yeah.
And I don't think I'll ever get over it.
Yeah.
And that was a kind of a way. I mean, I was losing weight before then, but that was a wake up call for me to, even become more, try to be better.
Oh yeah.
Because I do not want to go that way.
Oh yeah.
It's a horrible way to go.
It is.
Right. Yeah.
It totally is. And it's like, if you think back to our consulting, conversation, like think about that meeting where somebody made the wrong decision and you have to pay for it forever. Yeah. Start working out, man.
Yeah. That's why I play guitar every weekend, because I hear guitar. I mean, that kind of stuff keeps your brain working. And, so I do those things. I mean, I do those things because I like it. But part of it is because to keep my brain working properly.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
You just have, I did it because I just had to get away from the things that were bringing me down and like refocus on the things that make me happy.
Yeah.
Like making music makes me happy. Writing code makes me happy. You know, like all that stuff.
And you stopped drinking for the most part, right?
I stopped drinking. I had a White Claw last night. That was it.
Yeah. I hardly drink at all anymore. I don't even like drinking too much anymore, but that's a good thing. It's so much better for you if you don't drink. And if you stop drinking, you'll instantly lose 10 pounds pretty much.
Yeah.
Right?
I've lost 5 pounds this week.
Yeah. See?
So well, listen, it was great talking to you today.
Yeah, I gotta let you go because Simon's probably asleep already. So I better let you go. But thanks so much for being on the 75th episode. You were on the 12th episode. Cool. And now you're on the 75th episode. And so I'm so glad you came back on the show, and we were able to get you back on. Simon recommended you to come back on. So
nice. Simon.
Thanks, Simon.
Thanks, Simon.
And I have a hard time thinking about who should I invite back, because maybe they don't want to come back. I don't know. So but anyway, thanks so much. I hope you have a great rest of the weekend. Being a bachelor until your family comes home. Yeah. And so
I have a few names I'll send you over Twitter.
Okay.
I want you to get on the show. Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah. And if Julia, I'd love to have Julia on the show.
Well, I can't do that. I can't.
I know.
That's 100%.
That's you got to go through her handlers, right?
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, man. Well, have a great weekend. And if you want to stick around afterwards, you can. Otherwise, if not, have a great rest of the weekend. And thanks so much. And I hope it doesn't snow too much up there.
No, it's good. Hey, I'll stick around because I want to send you a couple links real quick.
Okay. Thanks, man.
Take care, everybody.
Thanks. Well, that was a great guest for my 75th episode. Brady's a great guy, and I think I really like him because he's also a software engineer. I mean, a musician. So anyway, thanks so much for being on the show, Brady, on 75th episode. I'm sorry I couldn't get to some of the questions. I know there was somebody from South Africa that was on. But anyway, well, there wasn't really any questions. So anyway, let's go back to the slides and finish this episode. Thanks, Mark. My friend Mark is watching the show. I'm glad you're watching, Mark. So the war is still going on in Ukraine. So sad. So make sure you think about the people dealing with this awful thing, and if you can support them in any way, I hope you can. As you all know, I've been to Ukraine. I love it, and I want to go back. And so let's get this over with. I'm quite frankly tired of hearing it on the news. Also, help the kids in India. I raise money for the Voice of Slum in India. You can go to that link. There's lots of ways to help. Even if you just go to voiceofslum.org, please help the kids. They really need our support. I've been to the slums in Delhi twice now, and it's sad. So let's help the kids and help them with a better life. The two people who started this great organization are just wonderful. They recently got married in end of last year. There they are right there with me at the conference last year. And so let's help them out. They really need our support. The kids need us. All right. So next week I have Milan. I'm not going to pronounce his last name. He's a software architect on the AWS world. So if you guys love AWS, come back next week or 2 weeks, and we'll learn a lot about that. Also, please be safe. Listen to your medical professionals about COVID or whatever else is going on these days. And, if you can, go down to your local blood bank and donate blood. You guys know I do this every 4 weeks. But I spend 2 hours on the machine. You just need to spend 30 minutes. So please go down and help your fellow human by donating blood, because someday you might be that person needing blood, and you're going to want people like me donating. So please help out others by doing that. All right. Well, thanks so much, everybody, for watching the 75th episode. I'm getting a little emotional. I don't know why, but it's been an awesome 75 episodes, and I just want to thank all of you for watching and putting up with me and my shenanigans and talking about music or other things that we kind of go off the rails with. But that's what makes us, right? Is, we're just not programmers. We're humans, and we have other pursuits and other loves and other things that we like. And we're just people, and we just solve problems. That's what programmers do. So if you want to suggest a topic for the show or a guest, please email me at rockinthecodeworld@csharpcorner.com. I don't get any emails. Send me some love. All right. I'll see you in 2 weeks.